Tonight is a special night. Literally, as the sun goes down, is the 120th birthday of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And for those who are not familiar with very basic Jewish culture, a number 120 is a very special number. Why is 120 a very special number? Who knows? What? Moshe Rabbeinu lived till 120. So tonight, come in, come get a seat. So for me, this is a very special night. I'm really feeling, it's Rebbe's birthday. God willing, tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, I'll be flying to the Ohel to go and spend a few hours at the Ohel. I'll be back tomorrow evening. Not too long. So, of course. So l'chaim to all of you who are watching, all of you who are in person. Good evening, Gail and Sarah and everyone else. L'chaim that we should be Hasidim, and that we should be able to give the Rebbe the birthday gifts that he deserves. L'chaim. Okay. I have made an extremely ambitious goal for tonight. I'm ambitious by nature, but tonight is very ambitious. And I actually put a lot of time into this, both last night and today. And the idea was to continue our regular Monday night theme of taking a biblical character, in this case not a biblical character, but taking a character, and instead of studying the verse or studying a story in the Torah, instead trying to study the person, which usually is actually a lot harder, a lot more fascinating as well, than just studying a story, getting a full picture of a person. So I thought, let's try and do that with the Rebbe. Let's do the whole story. Let's try and understand who is the Rebbe. What's the story of the Rebbe? Now, who is the Rebbe? I'm not qualified. I'm not able to explain. At least not. There's many explanations. I shouldn't say that. I could explain what is a Rebbe. I could, and I probably should. But we've done that in the past. And I'm sure the opportunity will come to do it again. So, who is a Rebbe? What is a Rebbe? How does someone become a Rebbe? Why do we need a Rebbe? These are all very, very important questions that deserve another Farbrengen. Maybe after, whenever we finish, if you guys want, we can sit and Farbrengen about it. But that's not the objective of tonight's discussion. Tonight I want to try and give the full picture of the life of the Rebbe. And even though many of you have been around Chabad for a long time, some more than others, and you've heard many, many stories and many anecdotes and many beautiful ideas, they're not in a cohesive, organized format, number one. And there's no context, there's no structure and clarity in what came where. And they're nice things. There's no understanding of the story of the Rebbe per se. And I looked online, I didn't find anywhere a lecture or something of that sort that went through the life story of the Rebbe. I did find, of course, it's in my office, the Hayom Yom, the first book that the Rebbe published, that in the beginning of the book has a biography of each and one of the seven, even before, even the Baal Shem Tov and all the Chabad Rebbes. And in 1992, when they reprinted that book, they added many, many, many pages to the biography of the Rebbe. The Rebbe edited and approved this biography. It's a unique biography of the Rebbe. It's maybe 10, 15 pages long. It's unique, whatever. Found something on Chabad.org, and I literally went through my own mind and looked at different things. Every date, every moment in the life of the Rebbe that had an impact on us Hasidim, to try and, each event, some of them could be full discussions and full Farbrengens in their own right, but from the beginning, it's not the end yet, but from the beginning until the current moment, to try and have a whole picture of the life of the Rebbe, okay? I doubt I'm going to finish this in an hour. I warn you now. I doubt I'm finishing this in an hour. I'm going to try. And if you want to leave the middle, it's fine. If you're watching us on Facebook and you get bored in the middle, you can go away. I won't even know. But I think it'll be interesting. Okay? Ready? Ready. Start in 1902. 1902, today, literally today, good evening, Marsha, Yud Aleph Nisan, the 11th day of the Hebrew month of Nisan, which is today, tonight. The Rebbe was born in a city called Nikolaev. His parents was Rebbe Levi Yitzchak Schneerson. He was actually a direct son after son of the third Chabad Rebbe. The Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe, had 7 sons. The youngest son became the fourth Chabad Rebbe, the Rebbe Maharash. The oldest son was the great-grandfather of the Rebbe. So the Rebbe was literally a direct descendant, son after son, of the Alter Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, whose name he carried, Menachem Mendel, the same name. And that's actually why the Rebbe's name was Schneerson. And he married the Rebbetzin, we'll talk about that later, the previous Rebbe's daughter, whose name was Schneerson. So they were cousins, they shared the same last name, and it was literally, the Rebbe wasn't just the Rebbe because he married the daughter of the previous Rebbe. He, in his own right, was from the family of the Schneersons. His father, Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, was a very well-known Kabbalist, a tremendous scholar, a very, very holy person. Again, we could spend an hour talking about Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, we're not going to. But that was the family he was born to. He grew up in a very, very difficult time. One of the stories said of the Rebbe when he was a very young child. In Nikolaev, he was a young boy of 3 or 4 years old. His mother writes this in her diary. The Rebbe's mother, Rebbe Tzimchana, has a diary. Some very interesting things in there. And she writes that there was once a pogrom. Those who don't know, pogrom was literally where the masses, the mobs were being incited by the priest, whoever, to go and kill Jews, to loot, to burn down stores. And they were literally going through the streets, Nikolaev, and all the people were hiding in the basements and the cellars, knowing that any noise would tell the attackers and the looters where they are. They could be attacked, beaten, killed. And so there's a bunch of people all hiding together in a basement with little kids. And outside you hear the screaming and the breaking of the glass and the shouting. It was scary. Some of the kids started to cry and to, get scared. And the Rebbe, who himself was a young boy of 3 or 4 years old, who had some candies, was going around to the other little kids, his age, and he was comforting them and giving them a candy and quieting them down. And so already at the young age, a young child, he already displayed leadership and an unbelievable sensitivity to others, to the fear these young other children were having, hiding in the basement during a pogrom happening outside, and an ability to communicate and to connect to people of all ages to help them in a very difficult time. In 1909, when the Rebbe was 7 years old, his family moves to the city of Dnepropetrovsk. I practice saying it. No, listen, no. I once did, not today. It's a hard word to say. Dnepropetrovsk is in Ukraine, what's today Ukraine. It's in the center of Ukraine. It's one of the largest Jewish communities, still is. There's a huge Jewish community there. And in Dnepropetrovsk, that's his father became the official Rav, the official rabbi, which is a huge community. It's called Dnieper in short. If you can't pronounce that whole name, it's called Dnieper. It's a major industrial area. It's a big city, very big city. The Rebbe's father became the rabbi of this large city. So the Rebbe moved there together with his family. And in 1916, in World War I, there were thousands of refugees that were fleeing eastward into Ukraine from the front where Russia was fighting against Germany, whoever was in World War I. And there were many thousands upon thousands of Jewish refugees arriving in the city of Dnepropetrovsk. And the Rebbe said later that during that time, he learned from his parents, his home became the main center for the refugees. His mother and his father became very involved in physical needs of taking care of these refugees, literally providing food for them, taking care of their physical needs, finding them clothing, places to stay. In addition, the anti-Semitism then was very, very bad. And Jews were basically protected, vulnerable. They'd be attacked, they'll be kidnapped and then taken for ransom because the Russians were very suspicious. He was a spy. And so the Rebbe's father was raising money to redeem these people from prison, to find clothing for them, find places for them. And the Rebbe already then at a young age, 1916, he's 14 years old. And he learned how to care for another person, not just their spiritual needs to be a rabbi, not just as a rabbi, teaching Torah and being a spiritual leader, but dedicating himself heart and soul to literally providing food for refugees and providing the most basic living necessities. Full force. His home became an open center for the refugees during the war. And this is one of the hallmarks of the uniqueness of the Rebbe's leadership, is something that he already internalized at that young age during the first war, that our obligation, our responsibility to our community, to fellow Jews, to fellow people, is not only religious and spiritual, but it's very much in the time of need, in the time of war, in the time of crisis, emergencies, that we need to be there for them, taking care of their physical, most basic needs. And this became one of the signs of the Rebbe's leadership, in the way he trained Hasidim. Time like now there's a war in Ukraine, or whenever there's a natural disaster, a hurricane, a flood, Chabad is there within minutes. Food, basic needs, in order to help people with that which they need, in order to just to survive. This is the early years of the Rebbe. Now, of course, I would be remiss to say that during these early years, the Rebbe showed unbelievable scholarship. He was a genius of epic proportions. Very, very quickly, he outgrew the cheder and the structured schools in the Nepa Betrov, in Nikolaev. He had a private melamed, a private teacher that would learn with him. And he was truly very, very gifted in many, many ways. In 1923 was the first time that the Rebbe met the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe. So 1923, he's a man of 20 years old, okay? He's already much older. He's Bacher, he's very, very accomplished. His father was a chassid, tremendous genius, his father. He learned literally, became a scholar of his own right in a tremendous way. In 1923 is the first time that he travels to meet the Rebbe. Today sounds like, but then they didn't travel a lot. And it was far where they were. 1926 is when he became engaged to the previous Rebbe's daughter, to Rebbe Chaim Mushka. Okay? 3 years later, he gets engaged. They had a very long engagement because during that time, the previous Rebbe would be arrested by the communists. In 1927, the Frierdiker Rebbe, first of all, he was chosen already 2 years before. It was already known that the previous Rebbe had chosen that the Rebbe would become his son-in-law for his daughter. It was already known that there was an official engagement. But even after they formally became engaged, one day the Rebbe, when it's a whole story also, a story of its own, but when the communists, when the Russians came to arrest the previous Rebbe, so the Rebbe was outside walking to the Frierdiker Rebbe's house then. And his fiancée, Chaya Mushka, the Rebbetzin, saw him coming. She called out the window, Schneerson, we have guests. We have visitors. He got the hint. He was smart enough to understand who were the visitors that showed up. And he was able to go around and to make sure whatever evidence of the underground activities of spreading Yiddishkeit in Russia was very, very quickly destroyed. There's many stories at the time, eating documents, it's things that were done to prevent other people being incriminated. And then right away starting the worldwide movement to pressure the Russians to allow the Frierdiker Rebbe to leave Russia, which eventually was successful and his life was saved. So that's another story also of its own, but that was in between the engagement and the marriage. So the Rebbe didn't get married to the Rebbetzin until Kislev of 1928. So 2 years later, long time. A long engagement, yes, a very long engagement. During that time, after the previous Rebbe was finally saved and released from prison, where his original sentence was to be killed, and then 10 years of hard labor, and then 3 years, eventually he was released, the Russians, he had to leave Russia. He could only take family with him. And the previous Rebbe put him onto his family as his son-in-law, and there was a whole fight, but the previous Rebbe was insistent that he had to leave Russia together with the Frierdiker Rebbe, and eventually he left, and they went, eventually the whole story eventually ended up in Poland, in Ladvotsk, and in 1928 was the wedding in Warsaw, Poland. A massive wedding with thousands of people that showed up. The previous Rebbe was undoubtedly one of the leaders of the world, the Jewish world, and literally everyone that was in Poland and all these countries outside of Russia attended the wedding. Many, many thousands of people there. Very, very beautiful wedding. Many stories about the wedding. Many illustrious people the Rebbe met at that time. In the Rebbe's version of his biography, when he talks about his wedding, it's the Rebbe met this, the Rogatchover Goy, the Esrog HaSmicha. He met this, that's how his biography goes. At the wedding, he met this holy Jew and that holy Jew. Anyway, the only people that were not at the Rebbe's wedding was his parents. The Rebbe's parents, Rebbe Yitzchak and Rebbe Tzimchana, his parents, who were also very, very involved in spreading Judaism in what's today Ukraine, much further away, were already on the radar of the Russians, and the Russians would not let them leave. It was already, the Iron Curtain was closed, and they were denied visas to go to their son's wedding. And in the memoirs, in the diary of Rebbe Tzimchana, very, very, very sad chapter, where she describes how in their home, at that time, they, the night of the wedding, when they knew that the wedding was happening in Poland, and their son, that they couldn't be there, they made their own wedding celebration, their own party in their home in the Dnepropetrovsk, and the entire community came to give their support to their rabbi, that unfortunately was not able to attend his own son's wedding. And she describes the pain of not being with their son. They hadn't seen him already for a few years, and yet the joy of their son's wedding to the daughter of the Rebbe, etc. After they got married, the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin moved to Berlin. And the Rebbe enrolled in the University of Berlin, where he did courses in philosophy, mathematics. That's where he became friends with Rabbi Soloveitchik, who also was in the University of Berlin, the Rav. So another whole fascinating chapter of the Rebbe's life. And then in 1933, when Hitler came to power, so the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin left Berlin, and they moved to Paris. And there the Rebbe studied at Sorbonne University, and then also at an engineering college, until 1938. So then he had to escape from the Germans. But it's fascinating to spend 2 minutes talking about this. The fact that the Rebbe spent a number of years in college, although the Rebbe was very much against people going to college, and he said to people, I was in college, so I'm not just saying not to go to college because I don't know, I'm scared of the unknown. I was there. I know exactly what it is, and that's why I can tell you that I don't recommend it. It's the Rebbe. And this also could be a fascinating discussion. The Rebbe never felt a need to apologize for religion in the face of science. The Rebbe was extremely well-versed in the sciences until many, many years later. There's many stories of people who met the Rebbe in the 70s, in the 80s, and were shocked at the up-to-date knowledge of the Rebbe in medicine and in science and in every area. So the Rebbe was kept up to date on all of the advancements in technology and in medicine, etc. Very, very much so. The Rebbe would actually read all the medical journals and the scientific magazines and say articles for the Rebbe that she thought the Rebbe would be interested in. And so the Rebbe felt very strongly that science, not only is it not a contradiction to Judaism, not only does Judaism not need to apologize for whatever it is, whether it's the age of the universe or whatever the topics are, but if anything, science is a tool by which we can better understand God. And the Rebbe felt this very, very strongly, and there's many different parts to this, but suffice it to say that the Rebbe used his scientific knowledge, his knowledge of engineering and of all of these worldly concepts, not just there's religion and there's science, but as a way of developing an understanding of God, a way of seeing how the world is becoming more and more ready for a revelation of godliness in the way that the brain can comprehend and understand, in a way that it couldn't have in earlier years where our belief in God was much more faith. For example, the fact that there's an eye, one example, the fact that there's an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and all your actions are being recorded have an impact in heaven. Until 50 years ago, could you physically visualize and understand the idea that there's a God in heaven, an eye that sees and an ear that hears? No. You could believe that God is greater than me, so I can see only so far, and I can't see through the wall, but God can see through the wall, so God can see what I do in private. Right? Today, because of science and technology, is there anyone in the world, even a kid, that has a hard time physically knowing and experiencing the idea that you can be here and you can see what's happening in Australia as it happens, and you can talk here, they can hear you there, and your actions here can have tremendous impact there, and you push a button here and the bomb will go off there. Today, it's not even there's no belief anymore to God can see what we do from heaven to see in the earth. Science has made it able for us to experience it. Forget about just know it. We experience it. We see people on the other side of the world as they're moving. So today, that's just one example of literally hundreds where science is a tool in our coming closer to an awareness of God in the universe. Okay. We leave that topic over there. The war begins, World War II begins, and there was actually a general in the army there, French general, offered the Rebbe and his wife to escape to get a cottage, like a vacation cottage in the countryside outside of Paris. So everybody understood what was going to happen. He said no. He left Paris. He went to Vichy. He went to Nice. And then he went to Vichy. Then he went to Nice. From there, eventually got onto one of the last boats, and he got the whole story of the trade. He got to Portugal. From Portugal, he eventually got onto a boat. He actually had tickets on another boat that the previous Rebbe told him not to go on. He didn't go on, and that boat was hit by a torpedo. And eventually, in 1941, on the 28th day of Sivan, Chavches Sivan, 1941, right in the middle of the war, the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin arrived in New York. The previous Rebbe was already in New York at that time. Previous Rebbe came Tes Adar a year before. And the previous Rebbe, who very much felt what was going on in the Holocaust and was doing everything he could to try and wake up American Jewry to what was happening on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, worked tirelessly to get his son-in-law out of Europe. The previous Rebbe had 3 daughters. One of them, Shana, and her husband, Rebbe Nachum Mendel of Horenstein, was killed by the Nazis on Rosh Hashanah. The Rebbe had a brother that was killed by the Nazis in a mass grave. So they both, the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin both lost siblings in the Holocaust and other family members as well. And when the Rebbe finally made it to the shores of America, so the previous Rebbe sent a delegation of the leading Hasidim to go to the port, to go to, I guess, I'm not El Salem, wherever they came into America, to go into, to greet him. Or probably after El Salem, I'm guessing. There's videos of the Rebbe coming. And the previous Rebbe wrote a very, very beautiful letter saying to go meet my son-in-law, who is a goy, and he's a genius, and the Rebbe praised him. He's Bucky. He knows by heart the entire Talmud, Bavli, Yerushalmi, all the Rishonim, Achronim, Shas, Poiskim, the whole list of everything that the Rebbe knew by heart, like the previous Rebbe extolled his virtues tremendously. When the Rebbe came to America, he absolutely did not want to be involved in the leadership of Chabad, which he knew that if he would start working with his father-in-law, he would. He would. And the Rebbe, besides for many of his other tremendous qualities, was extremely humble. By nature, although you wouldn't imagine it, by nature, the Rebbe was a very, very introverted person. He even said that about himself. By nature, he's introverted. He did not want any kind of publicity or attention whatsoever. And he did many things to deliberately downplay his greatness during the time that he was in America before he became the Rebbe. So he actually got a job in the Navy shipyard in Brooklyn. He worked as an engineer. There's actually something, I should have looked up the exact details, that the Rebbe actually invented in submarines. They were having a certain technological issue with, I don't remember the exact details off the top of my head, should have searched it, but there was something that the Rebbe actually was able to invent while he was working for the American Navy, the U.S. Navy, on their shipyard in Brooklyn. And when he would go every day, he would take a subway to the Navy yard. He would sit he would wear, first of all, a short jacket. So Chabad Chassidim, all Chassidim wear long jackets, right? That's what they would wear during the week, with long jackets, not only on Shabbos. The Rebbe, because he wanted to look very non-assuming and very regular, he instead of wearing a shtreimel or a black up hat during the week, he wore a fedora, which is the hat that I wear, the brim down, called a fedora. It was very popular in New York in the 40s. And so his head was covered with a second hat, but a more modern hat, and a short jacket, not a long jacket. Looked very modern. He would sit on the tray with a newspaper in front of him, holding the New York Times or whatever was the newspaper back then, holding the newspaper in front of him. And he looked like he was just reading the newspaper. And then one day they took the newspaper, they saw that inside was taped photocopies of a mimer, of a Hasidic discourse of the previous Rebbe. So he was sitting on the train, learning a mimer, learning a Hasidic discourse, but from the outside you saw the newspaper. On the inside, it was Hasidus. And that's a typical story of how the Rebbe did everything he could to try and that no one should appreciate who he is, and in the beginning he didn't want to be in a leadership position at all.
That sounds like he's trying to assimilate. Like if you just told me that story and I didn't know.
Is he trying to assimilate? He was trying to assimilate. He was trying that the Hasidim would judge by the external, look. He looks more like a Rebbe. He didn't want leadership. He didn't want it in any way. He was a very, very private person. The only publicity the Rebbe did, I'll tell you something interesting. When the Rebbe got married, when he got engaged to the Rebbetzin, the previous Rebbe made 3 conditions with him. There were 3 conditions that he had to promise to do in order to be approved, to get permission to marry the Rebbe's daughter, the previous Rebbe's daughter. One was that he would farbring every Shabbos Mavarchim, which means once a month, we bless the upcoming month. So once every 4 weeks is a Shabbos, blessing the new month, and it's a Chabad custom to farbring, to bless the new month. The previous Rebbe made it a condition. To marry my daughter, you have to farbring once a month, number 1. Number 2, that Thursday night, called Leil Shish, which is a night of study to prepare for Shabbos, he shouldn't go to sleep, he should stay up all night studying. And every Thursday night, his whole life, the Rebbe would stay up a whole entire night studying. The Rebbe didn't go to sleep. And the third condition, we don't know what it is. It's a secret. It's a secret. But let's remember, why did I say that? So when the Rebbe, once a month, the Rebbe had no choice. Once a month, the Rebbe had no choice. And so once a month, the Rebbe would farbring with Hasidim, because that was a condition of his marriage. But other than that, the Rebbe never spoke in public. Never spoke in public. He didn't want anyone to know. He was very, very unassuming. Now, the previous Rebbe, who understood exactly how great is his son-in-law, was doing everything he could to get the Rebbe involved in leadership. So at that time, there was, again, the previous Rebbe had 3 daughters. One had passed away, was killed by the Nazis, Yimach Shemam. So there's 2 girls, two son-in-laws living in New York. The older one, called Rebbe Shmayahu Garari, known as a Rashag in short, was like an abbreviation of his name. He was put in charge of the yeshivas. The yeshivas was like, that's like the important institution in Chabad. Is a Chabad yeshiva system. So the Tomchei Tmimim, the Chabad yeshiva system, was under the authority or the control of the Rashag, the older brother-in-law. Right when the Rebbe came to America, the previous Rebbe put him in charge of 3 new organizations that he started. One was Kahas. Kahas is the printing house of Chabad. Now today, a printing house, okay, you have Art Scroll, you have Feldheim. Art Scroll didn't exist back then. There was no other, in English, there was not a single Jewish publishing house in America publishing Jewish books. Didn't exist. The first one was Kahas, Chabad. So the Rebbe was put in charge of printing books, primarily Hasidim, but then started doing English books. I'll talk about Talks and Tales. The second thing was Merkaz Inyanei Chinuch. Merkaz Inyanei Chinuch means the center, the organization, the center for educational matters, not including the yeshiva system, but the outreach of Chabad to educate. Primarily in the earlier years, it's primarily children, called Merkaz Inyanei Chinuch, the center of education, which something the Rebbe built up in the whole Chabad. Today, when you say that you're a shliach in Chabad, you're under the umbrella of the organization called Merkaz Inyanei Chinuch. That's the organization in Chabad that runs all Chabad shluchim, outreach, emissaries, the educational branch of Chabad. And the third thing was Machana Yisrael, which is the development fund of Chabad for fundraising, for bringing in money for Machana Yisrael. Those were all 3 organizations that the previous Rebbe put in the purview, in the charge of the Rebbe. Okay. Now the Rebbe started working on these 3 things. Eventually he got busy with them. The Rebbe did many other things as well. And eventually he stopped working in the Navy Yard. I don't know exactly when, or what was the final, he stopped. He started to work in 770. The Rebbe didn't even have a private office. He worked, those who were in the Rebbe's office, right? You were in the Rebbe's, whoever was on Soul Trek, you were in the Rebbe's office. Small little room. That was like kind of like, when you walked into 770, it's like right there in the front. The previous Rebbe's office was upstairs, that's where the Rebbe's office was. The Rebbe shared, that was a small room, that was shared with several secretaries. They worked together, a few people worked in that room, and nothing was, the Rebbe never changed his office, from when he was like the secretary of the previous Rebbe till today. That's the room he had, downstairs in the front. Yeah, very, very much modest. Now, the Rebbe at that time was unbelievably dedicated to the education of children. The Rebbe started several organizations then, all under Americas. The Rebbe started Mesiba Shabbos, a big push that every Shabbos afternoon, Jewish children all over should gather for parties, Shabbos parties. Shabbos parties. They would gather, get some candy, hear a story, say some verses, Mesiba Shabbos. This Mesiba Shabbos, the way the Rebbe was, didn't just have like little small Shabbos parties. There'd be big mega gatherings. The Lag BaOmer parades, that you also the Lag BaOmer parades with thousands and thousands of people. That began before the Rebbe was even Rebbe, for the children of Mesiba Shabbos. They would gather from all the different neighborhoods in Brooklyn and Williamsburg and wherever, and they would come for a massive parade and the food and whatever. This was the Rebbe's one of the things that the Rebbe pushed a lot. Secondly, the Rebbe started something called release time. This is again all before the Rebbe even became Rebbe. I'm going back in the 40s now. Release time is that New York State had a law that children are allowed 1 hour in school of religious instruction. 1 hour of religious instruction. So the Rebbe found out about this, and the Rebbe lobbied and pushed that all Jewish children, instead of getting religious instruction within the school from whoever was teaching it, should be allowed for 1 hour to leave the school, to go to a nearby shul, to be taught by yeshiva students, and to have an hour of authentic Jewish Torah learning. Precursor to like Hebrew schools. When you had them, you had cheder. And the Rebbe organized that there should be yeshiva students every Wednesday afternoon. The yeshiva in 7 Sunday would empty out. All the yeshiva students would go out to schools, public schools, all over the New York area. They would get these kids, bus to take them to the nearby shul, find a shul near the school where they could use the shul on Wednesday afternoon for an hour, and have release time for an hour. Another something he was involved with. The third thing I wrote down was Talks and Tales. The Rebbe started then a monthly publication for children called Talks and Tales in English, again, this is the 40s, which would be a combination of Torah ideas, Torah stories, and interesting things for children to read. There was very little reading material for a Jewish kid living in a somewhat observant home. So in the Talks and Tales, there'd be a section. I remember as a kid growing up, my mother had like tons of them from when she was a child. Done on typewriter, before computers and graphics. There'd be a nature section. Every edition had a different kind of bird, nature, tree, something. There'd be a section on wondrous stories in the Jewish history and all different sections that were meant to be interesting for children to read. And the Rebbe personally edited each and every single edition of this kids magazine called Talks and Tales, being produced on typewriter in the 1940s. In fact, there was a time the Rebbe was mailing them himself. The Rebbe, stories how the people saw the Rebbe sitting on it, stuffing them, making sure they would go out, stamping them, that they should go out. This was the Rebbe's dedication to engaging the children already in the 40s. In addition, the Rebbe was also a tremendous scholar. The Rebbe literally spent many hours of his day learning Torah. The first book the Rebbe published, and I have it in my office, I meant to bring it with me, is the Hayom Yom. If you're familiar with the Hayom Yom, the talks, a daily thought for each day. It looks like a small little book, but it's a book of tremendous depth and wisdom. It was published in 1942. That was the first book the Rebbe published, of his own day printing. In 1946 was the second book he published, which was the Haggadah, with very, very in-depth commentary. Tremendous Hasidus, Kabbalah, a lot of halacha in there, many halachic things, primarily of Chabad. It was like a Haggadah with Chabad customs, and it's the footnotes though. That's and then talks in the back and many additions and commentary on the Haggadah. Okay, and you can't not realize that a part of who the Rebbe was his unbelievable love and dedication to learning. He literally learned. I'll jump ahead for a story. After he had his heart attack, we'll talk about that soon. So when the Rebbe started his schedule back, so the doctors were trying to figure out how to help him and how to control him a little bit. So Dr. What's his name? From Chicago, Dr. Weiss. Ira Weiss was his primary doctor. So Dr. Ira Weiss said that at one point, so he told the Rebbe, I need to know your schedule. I need to know everything you do a whole day, every minute of the day, so we can try and see how to balance your schedule. And so the Rebbe agreed to tell Ira Weiss his full schedule, everything, on condition he'll never tell anybody. So he said, I can't tell you what the Rebbe did when, how he did it. But I can tell you that the majority of the Rebbe's day was involved in studying Torah. And we know how many hours the Rebbe was involved with people, answering thousands and thousands of letters and Yuchat and conference. So you can imagine if we know how many hours he spent with the public. When the Rebbe slept, he didn't sleep. It was literally that the Rebbe's life, at the end of the day, at his core, was a love for learning. Okay. Anyway, that's all until 1950. 1950, January, I don't know the English date, Yuchat, 10th day of the month of Shvat, in 1950, Shabbos morning, the previous Rebbe passed away. Saturday morning, the previous Rebbe passed away. Now, this starts a whole new chapter in the story of Chabad in general. The next year, from 1950 to 1951, is easy an hour right there. Like, without even having to blink, I could go for an hour straight on that period of the transition from the 6th Rebbe to the 7th Rebbe. But we're trying to give the whole picture, right? So just a few to explain. I already mentioned there was two son-in-laws. There was a Rashag, who was older, who carried himself more like a Rebbe. And then there was the Rebbe, who did everything he could to not be a Rebbe. But already people knew who he was. They could see. Again, he spoke once a month. He would farbrang for many hours. People spoke to him in conversation. The Rebbe had an unbelievable way of connecting to people and caring for people. And in Chabad, he was absolutely the one that people wanted to become the new Rebbe. He was the one that. Yeah. So he was the one that people wanted to become the new Rebbe. Without a doubt, without a question, he was a choice of Hasidim. But although Hasidim were asking the Rebbe to become the 7th Rebbe, the Rebbe refused. The Rebbe was not willing to become the Rebbe. And there's many, many stories, and many people came to the Rebbe asking the Rebbe for help. The Rebbe wouldn't take letters. He would say, go to the previous Rebbe, go. One story is that he once was in conversation with his brother-in-law, the Rashag, the older brother, who at that time wanted to be the Rebbe. He was the older brother-in-law. He wanted to be the Rebbe. I'll give you some of the inside politics. The previous Rebbe's wife, Rebbe Chamadina, the wife of the 6th Rebbe, the mother-in-law, she wanted the Rashag to be the Rebbe, not the Rebbe. Rebbe Chamadina never accepted fully that the Rebbe became the successor of her husband. Never accepted it. There was a lot of friction there, yes. And, it's another, going, maybe we're on, we shouldn't go there.
She had sons.
No, she had no sons. She had 3 daughters. The previous Rebbe's wife, she had 3 daughters, Mechamadina. One died in Europe by the Nazis. There was 2 married daughters living in New York. So the older son-in-law, Shmuel Gerari, was the one that she wanted to become the next Rebbe. The Chassidim didn't want the Rashag. They wanted the Rebbe. They knew that the Rebbe is the Rebbe.
How long did she live?
A long time afterwards. I don't know. She lived a long time afterwards. The family eventually came apart, but that's by the Heitevis story with the books. It's another story. Maybe we'll get to there later. I was going to say something I forgot. So the Rashag, when eventually the Rebbe became the Rebbe in 1951, I will just tell you this, since we're going a little bit to the family politics. And I'll tell you one story. When the Rashag became Rebbe, not long afterwards, the Rashag realized that the Rebbe is the Rebbe, and he became a full-fledged chassid of the Rebbe. He did. The Rashag, the brother-in-law of the Rebbe, was an absolute chassid, completely dedicated to the Rebbe, against the wishes of his wife, and against the wishes of his mother-in-law. And there was a lot of family tension between the Rashag and his wife and his mother-in-law, who both did not agree with his decision to back the Rebbe. There was one time, so in 770, in that year, in between 1950, I'm for sure going where I shouldn't go, but just one story, I already started. So there was 2 minyanim happening. 2 minyanim, for they each had to say Kaddish, the 2 son-in-laws, were each saying Kaddish, they were each davening. And one time, one of the yeshiva students that was very strongly, I know his name, I'm not going to say, wanted that the Rebbe should be Rebbe, took the Sefer Torah from the other room, the other shul where the Rashag was davening, and took the Torah, so they wouldn't have a Torah. And when the Rebbe Chamadina found out, she actually cursed this yeshiva student for taking the Torah. It was messy, let's just say that. The Rebbe told him not to worry about it. He went to the Rebbe, what should I do? I was cursed by the wife of the Rebbe, whatever. There's a lot of politics that happened during that time also, a lot. But suffice it to say that during that year, it was clear to the Hasidim that despite the fact that the Rebbe was doing everything he could to hide his who he was, despite that, the Rebbe was absolutely the favorite until 1951. In 1951, the Rebbe became a Yuchat. In 1951, exactly on the first yard site of the previous Rebbe, at that Farbrengen, although the Rebbe didn't say before, in fact, before that Farbrengen, the Hasidim put an ad in the newspaper promoting the Farbrengen that was going to be, and they said that the Rebbe is going to accept the leadership of Chabad in the ad. That was in the newspaper. And when the Rebbe saw the ad that said he was going to that the Hasidim would accept him as a new Rebbe, he called in the Hasidim to put it in, said, I want you right now to go print a retraction saying that it's not true. Pay for another ad, or close the door early. Just close the door, thank you. To put in another ad saying it's not true, he's not becoming the Rebbe. So the Hasidim said to him, Shmuel Levitin was the head guy. So Shmuel Levitin told the Rebbe, the ad doesn't say that you're becoming Rebbe. It says that we're accepting you as Rebbe. You can't make us put in the ad that we're not accepting you as Rebbe. You understand? So the ad stayed. The point is that until 1951, the Rebbe refused. Anyone that came to him to be Rebbe, he refused. Before that Farbrengen in 1951, Hasidim came to him with a Ksav Eskashros. A whole delegation of Hasidim came in with a letter signed by hundreds of Hasidim from all over the world, demanding that we accept you as our Rebbe. And they gave it to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe started to cry, and the Rebbe said, I don't want to take it from you. And the Rebbe was crying in this meeting with the leaders of Chabad, crying, they don't want to, don't force me, don't make me do this. The Rebbe wasn't playing games. The Rebbe, with all of his heart and soul, did not want to be Rebbe. They say, I'm going to go too long, they say that the Rebbe was the one that pushed him. She said, if you don't become Rebbe, all the work of my father will go in vain. Whatever. For sure, the Frierdiker Rebbe told the Rebbe to, in a dream or whatever. There's other stories that the Rebbe said that when the very beginning after the previous Rebbe passed away, so the Rebbe said, the previous Rebbe never told me to become Rebbe. And after that, he never said that again. I mean, the previous Rebbe did come to him and tell him, whatever. I'm going too much into the details. The point is that 1951 was Yud Shvat, and I've talked about this before. It was one of the pivotal moments, not only in the lifetime of the Rebbe, but for Hasidim. 1951, there's videos of it. The previous Rebbe, the Rebbe was speaking, saying talks, and then one of the Hasidim gets up on a chair, on the bench, and says, Rebbe, the talks, the sikhs are very nice, they're very beautiful, but the Hasidim want to hear a maimer. We want to hear a maimer. A maimer, which is a Hasidic discourse, is the way by which each Rebbe formally accepted the leadership of the next generation. They would say a discourse based on the last maimer of the previous Rebbe. The Rebbe got very serious. You can hear it on tape. And then the Rebbe says, in the last maimer, in the booklet that was given out for my father-in-law before he passed away, the Rebbe writes, and there's a pause. You can hear it. I don't know how to describe it in my own words. You can hear it on the tape like a pause. And then the Rebbe starts with the tune. And you can hear like the commotion in the room. And like that moment when the Rebbe switched the tone of his voice and started to use a sing-song melody of that melody was the moment that the Rebbe became Rebbe. That's Chal Rebbe Duchman got up on the table, said the Shechayanu. The Rebbe cried tremendously in that Farbrengen, many tears. But the reason I'm talking about is in that Farbrengen, the Rebbe also made very clear what's the mission of his leadership. And in a nutshell, in 1 minute, the Rebbe was very clear. First of all, that we are a seventh generation, and our job is to bring Mashiach, to bring the Shekhinah back to the world. So even though the first few decades of the Rebbe's leadership, the emphasis on Mashiach was not as strong as it will be, we'll discuss, God willing, soon, in the 1990s, etc. But it was very clear, from the very first talk of the Rebbe, this is the mission, to bring Mashiach. That's clearly the mission. Then the Rebbe said the mission statement about the love of Hashem, the love of Torah, the love of a Jew, many things. Anyway, one more thing about that time, and then we move on. 7 days after the Shiva of the Frierdiker Rebbe ended, and this many people don't know probably. 7 days after the previous Rebbe passed away, the Rebbe sent his first shliach. The first shliach to be sent by the Rebbe was in 1950, even before he became the Rebbe. The first shliach, anyone knows, was Michal Lipsker to Morocco. Allah Shalom. First shliach to be sent out to Morocco. The big Jewish community in Morocco, they were looking for a rabbi. They requested from Chabad to send someone. That was the first shliach. And this was typical of the Rebbe's style, that the Rebbe never ever once said that the shluchim, my shluchim, was always an extension of the previous Rebbe. Like, previous Rebbe shliach. Now obviously it was the Rebbe shliach. He was sent by the Rebbe after the previous Rebbe passed away. But it was always like in a certain humility from the Rebbe. He never described it in his own. It's the Frierdiker Rebbe shliach. But already, even before he became a Rebbe, he already started sending shluchim. Which is another monumental transformation that the Rebbe did in leadership. Most leaders keep things in-house. They want you to come to them. They keep the power. And the Rebbe was the exact opposite. To send shluchim out, to conquer the world. And the Rebbe had an unbelievable closeness and affinity to the shluchim that were all over the world. So much so, I'll tell you two very, very short stories. Number one is that when the Rebbetzin, the Rebbe's wife, Chaya Mushka, passed away in 1988, the Rebbe, the first thing the Rebbe told his secretary is, Medaf Mediyah Zayin Kinder, you need to tell the children. Now the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin never had children. He was referring to the shluchim. That was his first concern when they told him that his wife had passed away. He asked Rabbi Yudah Krinsky to let the children, meaning the shluchim, to let them know that their mother had passed away. That was first of all. Because the way the Rebbe saw it, and the way we see it as well, that the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin were the parents of the shluchim. We are their children. And let the children know that their mother, that the Rebbetzin passed away. That's number one. Number two is very shortly before the Rebbe's stroke in 1992, which we're going to talk about too soon also, God willing, the Rebbe cleaned out his office. Now the Rebbe's office was piled high with svarim. The Rebbe lived in his office. After the Rebbe passed away, he literally didn't leave his office 24/7, literally. Besides we're going to 770, but I'm saying he was in his office the entire time. And there were thousands of letters the Rebbe kept. The Rebbe had a system, he kept letters and stuff, he knew where to find stuff. And the Rebbe started a project, took several months, of sorting through and organizing his office. Many of the letters were sent to be printed. It's a whole story of the printing of the letters of the Rebbe, of Igris. Many things were in storage, were taken out to be burnt. The Rebbe burned thousands of letters and private documents. Things were put away. All the svarim were taken out to the library. Before the Rebbe's stroke, the Rebbe knew it was coming. Just that one of the ways that we know that the Rebbe knew that there was a stroke going to happen is that the Rebbe's office, which had been, the Rebbe never took time to organize his office. In years, he cleaned everything out. When the Rebbe left to the Ohel on the morning of the 27th of Adar, Tafshin Nun Beis, 1992, when the Rebbe had his stroke, the Rebbe's desk was 100% clean. There was not a single paper on his desk. There was nothing on his desk. The only thing on the Rebbe's desk was a 3-volume set of books called the Sefer HaShluchim. The Rebbe had asked several years before that they should print a book with pictures of all of the family of all of the Shluchim across the globe. My picture is in there. My family picture is in this book, as is every family that was on Shluchas in that time. When the Rebbe left to the Ohel, there was nothing on his desk except for books with pictures of the Shluchim. Nothing else. No Torah. That was what was on his desk when he left. Again, the Rebbe knew where he was going. You see the picture where he waved his goodbye. Very powerful picture. That was the only thing on the Rebbe's desk. So this is one of the key parts of the Rebbe's building up the Empire of Chabad, was the sending of the Shluchim, which started already in 1950. Okay, 1953, the Rebbe starts Neshei Chabad, the Lubavitch Women's Organization. Another revolutionary idea. In traditional Orthodox communities, and especially Hasidic communities, women had no role. Women had, especially in the Hasidic community, and in general the religious community. In 1953, feminism was starting to take over the world, but not in the Jewish community, for sure not. To start an organization dedicated just for the women, that they should have their own. Another very important conversation about the Rebbe's view on feminism and on the importance of women, and how the women need to be educated and be a front row seats in the journey of Judaism. And already in 1953, the Rebbe started the Neshei Chabad, talks where the Rebbe would talk just to the women, etc. 1956, the Rebbe opened up Gan Yisrael, camps, summer camps. Again, there's the idea of summer camps, then all the kids were off in the summer. Today you have thousands of Camp Gan Yisraels all over the globe. The first Camp Gan Yisrael, 1956, in the mountains. The Rebbe started Gan Yisrael, and he started for the girls as well, Camp Gan Yisrael. The Rebbe himself went to go visit. It was so important to the Rebbe that when they found a place, before they even opened the camp, the Rebbe took a few hours to travel each way up into the mountains to go and see the campgrounds. Later, when they wanted the Rebbe to come visit, he went two other times. When they wanted the Rebbe to come visit again, the Rebbe said, I'm still trying to make up the time that I lost when I went to go visit the camp a year before. I can't go visit again. But that's how important camp was to the Rebbe. We already talked about the Rebbe's focus on children, even before he became Rebbe. But in recognizing that camp provides an unbelievable opportunity to inspire young children, to connect to them when they're out of the formal school setting, it was a very important focus of the Rebbe was on camp started in 1956. Okay. Now let's go to 1967. What happened in 1967? Six-Day War. But you know what else happened in 1967? Connected to the Six-Day War is when Chabad really got on the map in the Jewish world. What happened at the Six-Day War? Israel was afraid to be completely annihilated. They were surrounded by 6 armies. There was like 10 Arab soldiers to every one Israeli soldier. They were outnumbered, outgunned, out everything. They had no chances, seemingly. Things were very, very bad. And again, this is also along, you can talk about the history of Israel at that time and how they were digging they were already preparing state gardens, state parks to become mass cemeteries, and the preparation for the mass destruction they were expecting to happen as the Arabs were talking about, death. And there was a very, very famous televised address from the Israeli Prime Minister at the time, Levi Eshkol, that was very, very, very faltering and uninspiring. And then 2 days later, the next day, was Lag BaOmer, 1967, and the Rebbe came out publicly, in the Lag BaOmer parade on Eastern Parkway for the whole world to see, front page newspapers in Israel, that God is protecting Israel. It's the safest place in the world. Nothing will happen to Israel. And Hasidim that wanted to leave Israel, the Rebbe said not to leave Israel. People that were afraid, they wanted the kids to come back from yeshiva from Israel, the Rebbe said they should stay in Israel. The Rebbe was the only Jewish leader that came out, not just he said it's going to be good, front page newspapers in Israel, in the whole world, televised address. Lag BaOmer, but now he said on Shabbos in a sermon, televised in the Lag BaOmer parade. And it's all on video. Ayedish, brother and Schwester in the Eretz HaKodesh, your brothers and sisters are worried, and God is with them. And that's when the Rebbe started the Tefillin campaign. The Rebbe said, there will be the secret of our success. It says about the Tefillin, it says in the verse, that when the nations of the world will see that the name of God is called upon you, the Yaru Mimeka, and they will become afraid of you. And this, says the Talmud, is referring to the Tefillin Shebarosh, the Tefillin on the head. And if you use the word Tefillin, this will cause that the nations should be afraid of us and will win miraculous ways. The Jewish people will be saved. There's no reason to be afraid. And then the Rebbe encouraged every single chassid in Israel to go around, to go to the army bases, to go to the soldiers, and to get every soldier to put on tefillin. And the Chabadniks that were in the army and all the reservists were going over the tefillin and getting thousands and thousands of non-religious Israeli soldiers to put on tefillin. And then what happened? We all know the story of the 6-Day War, right? In 6 days, we didn't just not get slaughtered. We literally conquered triple the size of the territory of Israel. We wiped out 6 armies. The greatest military victories in history of mankind. And the only one that predicted that was the Rebbe. And that's when Chabad became the Rebbe became the hero that he became, and that the Tefillin campaign, that till today, everyone knows Chabad, Tefillin, you put on Tefillin. This started in 1967, the 6-Day War. Okay. And talking about the Rebbe's involvement with the land of Israel is also a very important conversation. Not for now, but the Rebbe's involvement with every single Israeli prime minister that met with the Rebbe, his involvement in the highest levels of security and in the IDF. It's another conversation. 1970 was the first hookup Farbrengen. Anyone here ever heard of a hookup Farbrengen? Hookup. What's a hookup? So again, now we're talking about 1970. Today, we go on Facebook Live and you can watch a class. You go on Zoom, you see everything like this. What?
That room with all those
Yeah, so we saw those who went on the trip to New York with us on the Soul Trek. We went upstairs and said these little rooms with like 45, I don't know, 200 phones in there, whatever it is, and all the switchboards. That began as a hookup. And these young Hasidim, geniuses, to figure this out in the 70s, way before there's any technology of Zoom meetings and all that, to basically phone through multiple phone lines to hook up. It started by the Yuchat Farbrengen of 1970, which was the 20-year anniversary of the previous Rebbe's passing. It's a big, big Farbrengen, a very special day. There were Hasidim in Australia and in London and in Israel, and they couldn't join. So they were able to create live hookups so they could call in international numbers. You can imagine, to call in, and they had hubs. So let's say in Jerusalem was a hub, and then from Jerusalem, other places in Israel could call into the hub in Jerusalem. Then they could have hookups in their cities. They would gather in the shuls, or in Kfar Chabad, or whatever it was, probably Kfar Chabad. And there were multiple. I think it started with Jerusalem, with Israel, London, and Melbourne, to be able to hear live as the Rebbe was talking in Brooklyn, that they were able to sit in the shul and hear the Farbrengen as it was happening. 1970. Talking about like the front lines of technology. Jumping out of order for a second, 1980 was the first satellite Farbrengen. So, I'm sure many of you have seen videos. In 1980, the Rebbe started live streaming his Farbrengens. Live streaming Farbrengens. For anyone else in the world who's doing this. Live streaming from 770. They installed on the roof of 770 a massive satellite dish, huge satellite dish, that would beam out before cable TV even existed. So it's literally satellites. They would bring trucks to 770. They bought professional camera crews with built-in places to stand with the cameras. They had trucks outside with the dishes and everything beaming up the Farbrengen up into the satellite. And then people could watch on TV, flipping the channels. And there was a Rebbe Farbrengen live on TV. And you had people from all over the world watching, just flipping through the channels, many stories. The satellite TVs, watching Farbrengen 1980 hookups. 1989 was the first Hanukkah Live. Just this idea. Hanukkah Live was something else entirely amazing. Hanukkah Live was perhaps his first Zoom meeting, if you will. Hanukkah Live wasn't just that the Rebbe was streaming via hookup or via satellite, you could watch him. But what created were different communities could all jointly participate in a global Hanukkah party. And they had menorah lightings all over the world, in Moscow, in Jerusalem, in Melbourne, in Florida, in New York. And people, they were able to watch. They made the blessing in Moscow, and then in Australia, and then in Israel, the chief rabbi by the Kotel, and then the Rebbe. And it created, not just were you able to watch a Farbrengen happening, but an interaction where people saw all over the world simultaneously celebrating Hanukkah. Again, signs of Mashiach and using technology in unprecedented ways to bring the world closer together and to bring God in a more revealed way into the world. That was started with the first hookup for Rebbe in the 1970. That little room, that's Chabad's leadership in technology begins. Okay, 1972. 1972. What's 1972? Well, if 1902 was Rebbe's birthday, Rebbe was born, 1972 is the Rebbe's 70th birthday. So tonight, Yud Aleph Nissen, on the Rebbe's 70th birthday, was a massive Farbrengen in 770. Massive Farbrengen. And the Hasidim came from all over the world. The Rebbe's 70th birthday, special day, turning 70. Very big Farbrengen. And that Farbrengen, very special Farbrengen, the Rebbe then came out and he said, after doing the Farbrengen, they were singing, it was very lively. The Rebbe said that my friends, people that care about me, are advising me that now that I've turned 70 years old, it's time to retire. Slow it down, take it easy. I'm 70 years old. I built up a beautiful Chabad. Slow it down. Said the Rebbe, and I'm going to make it very short, although it's a Farbrengen of its own. The Rebbe said, we don't retire in Judaism. We don't slow down. In fact, I'm going to increase in tremendous ways, and I want to make this year, my 71st year of life, that Chabad should open 71 new institutions. Now today we're opening 1,200, but 71 new institutions in 1972 was like literally doubling or tripling the size of Chabad at that time. Huge. And it happened much more than 70 institutions. The Rebbe says he's going to give 10%, if I'm not mistaken, of the costs of the first year of every one of these new institutions He'll be involved with it. And that was the Rebbe's 70th birthday celebration, opening 71 new institutions in Chabad. I'll jump ahead for a second. 1982, Yud Aleph Nissen, tonight, the Rebbe's birthday, when he turned 80 years old. Also a massive, massive farbrengen. Imagine Rebbe's 80th birthday. 770 was packed. And the Rebbe then also was very strong about increasing in activities and expanding. And as part of expanding, the Rebbe decided that he wanted to personally give a birthday gift. You know, give birthday gifts. He wanted to give to everyone at the Farbrengen a gift that they should study Tanya. The Rebbe would personally give a Tanya to each and every single person at the Farbrengen. Now the Rebbe just turned 80. I want you to understand something. The Farbrengen started at 9:30 at night. When the Farbrengen started. Farbrengen ended, I'm not sure what time it ended, but immediately when it ended, the Rebbe stood in his place, where he'd been sitting for the last few hours, not even a bathroom break. Man of 80. The Rebbe was distributing Tanya to thousands of people until 6:15 in the morning. 6:15, it was already light outside, and the Rebbe at 80 years old is still standing, personally, one by one, handing each and every single person that came by a Tanya. I heard stories in New York. People weren't by the Farbrengen. They went to sleep. They woke up in Williamsburg and said, the Rebbe's giving out times in the morning. People are coming in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they were still giving out times. Understand? 80 years old till 6:15 in the morning, from 9:30 at night. Yeah. Okay. 1977, Shmini Atzeres, the night before Simchas Torah, during the dancing in 770, the Rebbe had a very massive heart attack. It's another story. The Rebbe didn't want to go to the hospital. He insisted that they should. First of all, the Rebbe insisted that they should finish the Hakafis. He didn't want to go upstairs. He went upstairs. He wouldn't make Kiddush. He wouldn't eat till he made Kiddush. But he wouldn't make Kiddush outside the sukkah. So even though he just had a heart attack, he went outside his room to go to the sukkah to make Kiddush. Then he could drink. And then he had another more severe heart attack later in the night when he was already on the EKG. He refused to go to the hospital. They basically, it's a full story of its own, but in 30 seconds, they turned the Rebbe's office into a hospital room, and the Rebbe stayed in his room from Shmini Atzeres until Rosh Chodesh Kislev, which is probably about 40 days later, approximately, 37 days later, whatever it is. The Rebbe was in his room, and the Chassidim didn't see the Rebbe, etc. When, during that time, there were live hookups, the Rebbe insisted that he has to still farbrengen for the Chassidim, which was a big struggle with the doctors. But then the Rebbe won. The Rebbe wanted something he won. And he spoke, first they gave him permission, the very first Motzei Shabbos, after Simchas Torah. They gave him permission to speak. I don't remember if it was for 2 minutes or for 5 minutes. He spoke for 20 minutes. You know what I'm saying? And they're worried about his heart, that you're going to talk, it exerts you. Anyway, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, the Rebbe left 770 to go to the car, to go to his home, to go home. For the first time in over a month, he's going home. And word got out that the Rebbe's coming out. No one knew exactly what's going to happen, if, when, this, that, what's going to happen. The Rebbetzin was upstairs in the Friedrich Rebbe's apartment, watching 770. Okay, so again, you've been to 770, right? Many of you have been there. Those who have been with us on the trip. So we didn't go upstairs. That's the previous Rebbe's apartment. It's locked off. You can't get in there. No, it's not open at all. But she was upstairs in the previous Rebbe's room, overlooking Eastern Parkway, and she was watching the Hasidim outside, throngs and throngs of hundreds of Hasidim, waiting to greet if the Rebbe would come out. And when the door of 770 opened, and the Rebbe was standing there, you have to understand, the Hasidim hadn't seen the Rebbe since he had a heart attack. And they did a long time. And the joy that erupted from the crowd was so unbelievably intense. The singing, there was a special song they composed in honor of this, it was called the Rosh Chodesh melody. That's the Rosh Chodesh melody. The Rebbetzin was watching the Hasidim dancing. Also, she was very private. She didn't leave with her husband. Some would walk up together, holding hands. She didn't leave with her husband. She stayed at 770 watching, and then she went to the side by the library. She got another car, and she went home separately. No one should see her. But she was there watching. And Chesed Halberstam, I think it was Chesed Halberstam, was an attendant that helped out, was standing in the room upstairs with her while she was watching. And she had tears in her eyes, watching the love that the Chassidim had, the joy of the Chassidim to see the Rebbe healthy, walking out of 770. And she said, I don't know exactly what she said, Azaz Zisin Soldaten, such sweet soldiers, saying in Russian, she was using Russian words, like that the love. I knew that they were such sweet soldiers, but that such love that they had, I didn't know. I don't know the Russian word she used, but that was basically the point. Anyway. After that, the doctors very much wanted the Rebbe to slow down. He had a heart attack. He's already in his late 70s. It's time to take it easy a little bit. The Rebbe refused. So there's one story to give you an idea. They told the Rebbe, the doctors told the Rebbe, that if you don't slow down your activities, there's a 60% chance that you'll have another heart attack. Okay, the Rebbe didn't seem too phased. So the doctor asked him, did you understand what I said? So he said, yeah, I understood. You said that even if I continue doing everything that I've been doing till now, for 40% chance that nothing will happen. That's how the Rebbe responded. I got it. I can keep on doing everything I'm doing without slowing down one bit. 40% chance, it'll be fine. That was the Rebbe. That was the Rebbe. That defines the Rebbe. Absolutely. That was the Rebbe. Okay. 1980, the Rebbe starts Tzivos Hashem. Tzivos Hashem is the army of Hashem, which is only for children, an exclusive club, an exclusive army of children. Again, we talked even before the Rebbe became Rebbe. There was such a strong emphasis on children. And here the Rebbe made a whole formal push, a formal campaign for children. And after that, the Rebbe would have rallies with the Rebbe, the whole, this tremendous scholar, this tremendous leader who has thousands of Chassidim already, takes the time to have a rally to speak to children. Because the Rebbe knew this is the future. This is to the Rebbe to spend time talking to young children. Which other great rabbis in any time of Jewish history can you think of that had times where they would talk exclusively to children? Think of any great rabbi, and there's a lot of great rabbis in Jewish history. Even current day, think of the Gedolim, the great rabbis of today. Can you imagine any of them sitting in a room with only children? Yeshiva students are not allowed in. They're listening from the women's section. Only for the children to talk to the children. The Rebbe's vision is, there's much to talk about, but we move on. Okay. Another very interesting thing that started then in the early 80s, starting 82, 83, was that the Rebbe then began a very strong push on inspiring the world to get ready to greet Mashiach through the Sheva Mitzvahs, the 7 Noahide commandments. There had never been a Jewish leader that talked a lot about being an influence on the nations, a light unto the nations, the responsibility of the Jews to do everything we can to make the world a more moral, a more ethical, a more spiritual place, a more godly place. An idea of revealing godly values into American society, to the world, something the Rebbe began to push very strongly. A moment of silence in public schools. Why does a Jewish leader care what happens in public school? The Rebbe campaigned tirelessly and really alone. There was no one else in the Jewish world that felt the way the Rebbe felt about this. That we have an obligation to make sure that public school kids, non-Jewish kids, not even Jewish kids, that non-Jewish kids should have a moment, a minute every day where they think about God. And not God, think about a higher power, think about morals and values. The Rebbe spent a lot of time talking about the breakdown of the moral values of society. Something that very, very much bothered the Rebbe. Crime rates in New York in the 80s was very, very high. It was a very amoral time in some ways. And it pained the Rebbe that the world needs to be a better place. Not just that the Jewish community needs to be a better community. We have an obligation to the universe. Teaching the world about the commandments of God, about, again, the moment of silence. They were talking about incarceration, about prisoners, etc. Something the Rebbe became a global leader of the world. The Rebbe started the Department of Education. He was involved in pushing at the government, whether it's agree with what they do with today or not. But the Rebbe felt that the government's obligation to make sure that we're educating our children. And in 1982, for the Rebbe's birthday, Congress passed Education Day USA, which was on the Rebbe's birthday, on Yud Aleph Nisan. And every single year in Washington, until this year, including, every single year, the day of the Rebbe's birthday is declared as Education Day USA, which shows you the impact that the Rebbe had not just on the Jewish community in Chabad, but on that in America and in the world, to appreciate the importance of educating our youth, to have values, to have God in their lives, to have a higher sense of right and wrong, not just if I'll get punished or caught or not. Anyway, I leave it alone, although we can go further. Then comes 1986. So something else about the Rebbe's life. In the earlier years, basically in 1940 already, when the Rebbe came to America, people wanted to talk to the Rebbe. They wanted advice. He was told just the Frierdiker Rebbe is just son-in-law. People would come to talk to the Rebbe all the time. Now, if you saw, where was the Rebbe's office? Downstairs. Yeah, and they would just walk in. It became like a little bit like the Rebbe was trying to work on Talks and Tales and on Mesilas Shabbos and on parades. And people were just walking and talking to him. And the Rebbe didn't say no to anybody. So the Rebbe felt his time was getting too devoured. So the Rebbe decided to start something that 3 times a week, Sunday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday night, after Ma'ariv, after the evening services in Shul, he'll sit in his office, and anyone that wants to come talk to him can come talk to him. Open time, you don't need an appointment. If you want to, just talk to me. Don't come in the middle of the day when I'm trying to work. These are the time after work, at night, after Ma'ariv, I'm available. This is how Yechidus, the private meetings of the Rebbe started. The private audiences started already then, before he was Rebbe. Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, after evening services, come have a private meeting with the Rebbe. Now, it started to get more and more people, so they started making slots, and Rabbi Chadikov started to make appointments in the earlier years, he still was able to get an appointment. But as Chabad kept on growing, and growing, and growing, and more people wanted to get the Rebbe's advice, and get the Rebbe's, it became more and more difficult for the Rebbe to see everyone. Until by the 70s, the Rebbe would be sitting till the morning. Literally, I talked about 1980 getting out Tanya till 6:15 in the morning. In the earlier 70s, there were many times it was already day outside, and the Rebbe was still meeting people from the night before. Till the morning, literally till the morning. And it became out of control. And so, till you couldn't get an appointment, unless like some emergency, and you'd schedule an appointment months in advance, and then it became that Chassidim could only go on their birthdays, only once a year. It was impossible. And so eventually, and then, the Rebbe had a heart attack, and so then started really cutting down Yechidus. Yechidus is no longer given to most people, only certain people. And then the Rebbe stopped. No more private audiences. There would be private, general, so there'd be a few times a year. Anyone that was it used to be, anyone that got married went for a private meeting before their wedding to get a blessing. Any bar mitzvah boy, before the bar mitzvah went so the Rebbe would have group Yechidus. So anyone having a bar mitzvah in the next few months came for a group Yechidus. Anyone was getting married, group, the travelers after the high holidays, many visitors came. Not all the visitors wanted a Yechidus. Be one group Yechidus, etc. And then that stopped, and then there was letters. The Rebbe was getting 3 bags of mail a day. Every single day. Bags and bags of mail. Post truck would come. Officially, according to the United States Post Office, the second most mail in America, first went to the White House. The second most mail came to 770 Eastern Parkway. 770 Eastern Parkway. So basically in the 80s, there was no way to meet the Rebbe. Unless people would stand, like when the Rebbe would come into the shul for Mincha, 3:15, people had a very urgent request for a blessing, someone was sick, they would stand like in the hallway, like jump forward, and you got like 5 seconds, and then the Rebbe walked by you. Except for writing letters. The Rebbe answered letters. For hours every day, the Rebbe would sit and answer letters. So in 1986, the Rebbe started a new thing where he'd be available every Sunday, and he'd give out dollars for tzedakah. So the Sunday dollars, and you all know stories of the Sunday dollars, right? This started in 1986, where the Rebbe would stand outside, afternoon he would give out dollars. Until this also grew, and there'd be thousands of people come every single Sunday, thousands, not exaggerating. The block, the line would go all the way around Eastern Parkway, around to Brooklyn Avenue. People line up, and then you can come by. Anyone could come. Man, woman, men, Jewish, not Jewish, everyone would come. There'd be a chance to ask for whatever you wanted, to ask for a blessing. Okay. And why the dollar? The Rebbe said that when 2 Jews meet, the meeting should be to benefit a third. So every single person that came would get $1 to give to charity, and this dollar for charity became the vessel in whichever blessing they needed would be received. So they got this $1. Many would give their own $1 to charity and keep this $1 instead. They would write on it when they got it, and they give another $1, or dollars plural, to charity. We have $1 the Rebbe right there. Thank you, early. It was Vivi's $1. Yeah, so that's $1. The Rebbe $1. Probably on it says exactly the date when you got it. Oh, blessed. Not like that, but okay. So that's the dollars that the Rebbe give out. Started in 1986. As way that anyone could come to the Rebbe and get it. Besides for writing letters, anyone could write a letter to the Rebbe. And by the way, the Rebbe wouldn't even let his secretary open his mail for him, because it was private letters. They never trusted the secretaries. The Rebbe wanted he himself to open the letters. Then they bought him an electric envelope opener. That at least they put the envelope opener, you don't have to sit and open it yourself. And the Rebbe said to the secretaries that someone seals the letter with tears. And you want me to put it in an electric machine? I need to feel the tears when I open up the envelope. Anyway. This is another whole story. I have it in my notes, but we're not going to get to it because of time. The whole story with the Svarim. With the books that were stolen from the Rebbe's library in 1985. The whole court case where the Rebbe's other grandchild, the previous Rebbe's grandchild, Barry Garari, was taking books from the Rebbe's library, saying that they were personal, private inheritance. They weren't the public property of the Chabad community. They were the private property of the family. So he's entitled to half of the family inheritance. He was taking very valuable books and selling them. Eventually that went to court. And on Hey Tevis, the 5th of Tevis, 1987, the courts ruled that not only do the books belong to the Rebbe, the entire library of the previous Rebbe is Chasidim's, and basically the Rebbe is not a private individual. The Rebbe belongs to Chasidim. The Rebbe Tzin, Chaim Mushka, was deposed in the court case. And when they asked her under oath, who did the books belong to? She said, both the books and my father belong to the Chasidim. Not that the books belong to my father, they belong to the Chasidim. The books and my father belong to the Chasidim. And that line of the Rebbe Tzin was very, very powerful when the judge in his ruling quoted that statement of the previous Rebbe's daughter, Rebbe Tzin Chaim Mushka. And that's for Chabad another very, very special day. I feel bad skipping it, but it's, Hey Tevis is the day that the federal judge came to recognize that the Rebbe is our Rebbe, and it's another further game. 1988. Let's move forward a little bit. Let's go. 1988, February 10th, Chav Bei Shvat, the 22nd day of the month of Shvat, the Rebbe's wife of 59 years, Rebbe Tzin Chaim Mushka, passed away. Okay, the Rebbe Tzin, they've been married 59 years. She wasn't feeling well, so she went to the hospital on, I believe it was a Monday afternoon, if I'm not mistaken. They brought her to the hospital. She had been feeling well the whole weekend. Took her to the hospital. The doctor said to go to the hospital. She came. She was sitting on the chair in the hallway waiting, I guess, to get a room. She asked for a cup of water. She made this how she passed away. She asked for a cup of water. They bought her a cup of water. She made the blessing, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. That everything in the world came to being by your word, by His word. She drank the cup of water and her soul left her body. She died with that blessing on her lips. Now, that was a very, very painful time for the Rebbe. The Rebbe was extremely close to the Rebbe Tzin. They had a bond that was very private, very powerful and very unique. The greatest chassid, if you will, of the Rebbe was the Rebbe Tzin. The love between them was very, very powerful. It was very obvious and apparent the pain, the personal pain that the Rebbe felt. You see video and pictures of the funeral. They were married 59 years, but it wasn't just that they were married. They shared a relationship that the Rebbe didn't have with anybody else. To everybody else was Chassidim. The Rebbe was a certain detachment, even though people were closer, whatever. But the Rebbe was in the Chassidim. And the Rebbe and the Rebbe Tzin were like one, the closest friend, if you will, of the Rebbe. His confidant, the one that he spoke to, that was the Rebbe Tzin. And in 1988, when she passed away, the Rebbe was literally alone in some ways. There were many internal changes that happened after that. First of all, the Rebbe started to daven 3 times a day and all that with the Chassidim. He started to farbreng every Shabbos. Until 1988, the Rebbe never farbrenged every Shabbos. He farbrenged every Shabbos Mevarchim. Remember, I already told you, one of the conditions of his marriage was once a month he had to farbreng on the Shabbos before the new month. And on any special occasion. On any holiday, High Holiday, Rosh Hashanah, Yuchat Kislev, Purim, special days the Rebbe farbrenged. But every week to farbreng, that started after the Rebbe passed away in the memory of his wife, to farbreng every single Shabbos. Some other things. And then we come to, already it begins in the year September of 1989. This will be the last, September 1989. September 1989, which is high holidays of the year of Tav Shinun, the Rebbe said that this year is going to be a Shnas Niflois, a year of wonders, a year of miracles, a year of amazing things. Now, what happened in the world in 89, 90, and in 1991 was unbelievable change in the universe that the world had never expected. First and foremost, the fall of the Soviet Union. 1989, perestroika, the fall of the Soviet Union, the fall of the Iron Curtain. Jews were allowed to go to Israel, that there was freedom. Amazing. And then you have not only the Soviet Union, though many other countries that fell. Communism began to fall all over the world. Then you have the Gulf War. I'm condensing. The Gulf War, Saddam Hussein had these huge Scud missiles lined up to go and attack, literally could destroy thousands, millions of Jews. He had the ability to go rain on all the buildings in Tel Aviv, and there's a fear that there would be not only a regular warfare but chemical warfare on the Scud missiles. And again, the people were very, very scared. What will happen? And people should leave Israel and take their families out of Israel. And the Rebbe then also was very, very strong, just like in '67. No one should leave Israel. It's the safest place in the world. God will protect us. God will be there. And we know what happened to the Scud missiles. Nothing. 60-something Scud missiles fell on Israel, and not one person died as a direct result of the Scud missiles. There was one person, his leg was broken, and whatever, he ended up dying. But no one that was killed by a Scud missile. Unbelievable miracles. And many more miracles. If you know the wars, if you know the story of the Gulf War, there was absolute open miracles that took place then. And the Rebbe felt very, very strongly that these are clear signs of Mashiach coming. First of all, the whole fall of the Iron Curtain, miracles, the religious freedom that began to take over the world. But even more so in the Gulf War, in the Yalkut Shemaini talks about that the war of the nations. Then before Mashiach comes, be the wars of the nations, Gog and Magog, and how there'll be a Persian king who will stand up to fight against the other kings, a reference to Iraq and to Saddam Hussein. Without getting into the details of it, but the Rebbe was very clear. These are messianic times. What was happening in the world then was absolutely unprecedented. In the world, not only in the wars and in the social upheaval in the universe, but in technology. What was happening with technology in the 90s, the bringing together of the universe, the information age that began then, was another clear sign of Mashiach coming. One of the signs of Mashiach is that the world will be filled with the knowledge of God, the way the ocean, the water fills the bed of the ocean. That's what the Rambam writes. Like the information age, information at our fingertips, the World Wide Web, etc. And so then began a much, much stronger, clear push for Mashiach until on the 28th day of Nisan, 1991, Chav Ches Nisan, was a very, very powerful talk. And the Rebbe spoke with tremendous pain. That how could it be the Mashiach is not here? How could it be? We've done everything. I've done everything I can do to bring Mashiach. I've fought, and people are saying, we want Mashiach, because I'm saying to say it. And therefore, says the Rebbe, obviously everything I've done has been lehevel v'larik, scary words. Everything I've done has accomplished nothing. Imagine in 1991, the Rebbe is saying, everything I've done accomplished nothing. And obviously I'm not capable to bring Mashiach, and therefore I give over the job to you. Very, very, very scary sikha. So for the Rebbe to say, everything I did didn't go anywhere. I give it over to you, and now you're in charge. And the Rebbe said then, do everything you can. You have to fight for Mashiach, and you're responsible for Mashiach. And from that point on, from Chav Ches Nisan, Tavshin Aleph 1991, began a whole new focus in Chabad on Mashiach, with a whole new intensity and a whole new focus, which was very much because of what was happening in the world at that time. And this went on for a full year, almost a full year, until Chav Zayin Adar, 27th day of Adar, 1992. The Rebbe was at the Ohel praying it was a Monday afternoon. The Rebbe was at the Ohel praying, and we talked about this at great length. This was 30 years ago, a month ago. We talked about this at length on Shabbos and a few times. The Rebbe was there, and he had a stroke. He fell. I'll tell you one story of that stroke. The Rebbe didn't want to go to the hospital. Just like the Rebbe didn't want to go to the hospital when he had a heart attack. And when they first had Salah, we have Hatzalah here. The first Hatzalah to come to the Ohel to take the Rebbe was Hatzalah of Queens, cemeteries in Queens. And they took the Rebbe, and they put him into the ambulance, and guess what? The ambulance wouldn't start. It wouldn't start. The ambulance wouldn't turn on. It was working perfectly fine. There was no problem. They're trying. They can't get this out. Call another ambulance. But that already had Salah of Crown Heights had already come to the Ohel. They were much later than the Queens because they're coming from Crown Heights. And they came and they took the Rebbe back to 770, not to the hospital, after his stroke. Took him to his room. And then that other guy from Queens, after they left the cemetery, goes back to his car to figure out what's wrong with his van, his ambulance, puts the key in, and they started no problem. As I told you, there were many signs that only later became obvious. The Rebbe knew what was going to happen that year. From Rosh Hashanah, there were signs. A few weeks before the Rebbe's stroke, the Rebbe then said a very scary talk about how Moshe couldn't speak well. And the Torah said that since Moshe couldn't speak, Aaron, his brother, would be his interpreter. And how the previous Rebbe, at the end of his lifetime, the previous Rebbe was very ill at the end of his lifetime. The Russians had beat him and tortured him, and he couldn't speak very well. It was very hard to understand him. And so the previous Rebbe, at the end of his lifetime, couldn't speak, and others had to speak for him. And the Rebbe was basically saying to the Hasidim, there will come a time when I can't speak, and you will have to speak for me. I mean, he didn't say it as explicitly as I just said it, but it's very obvious if you learn that Sikha, the Rebbe was saying exactly that. I gotta say, he cleaned up his whole office. There was nothing on his desk. He finished before he left. And another two painful years in Chabad history, from 1992 until 1994. We don't have time to talk about it now. Maybe we'll say l'chai, if you want, we can say afterwards. But very sad time. The Rebbe will come out to the balcony sometimes. Chav Zayin Adar, the exact same day, in 1994, when the Rebbe had his first stroke, 2 years later, on the same day, 27th day of Adar, the Rebbe had a second stroke. Same day. And from that second stroke, which was after he had an eye surgery, the Rebbe never recovered after that. The Rebbe never really woke up after that. And Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night, 1994, I remember this day clearly. I remember my father waking me up. I remember going to the funeral. It's like etched in my mind. Gimel Tammuz, Tafshin Nadalet, 1994, 1 o'clock in the morning, the Rebbe's soul left his body. And next to the Rebbe was buried in the Ohel, where he spent so many hours davening for all of Klal Yisrael. I should say one thing. The Rebbe, if you see videos of the Rebbe in the Ohel, there was a little booth where the Rebbe would daven. In the early years, the Rebbe would daven in the Ohel just to daven there. The winter was freezing cold, the summer was hot. So they built a little room for the Rebbe. You see it in the videos, with a glass, with a little, like a slot to put the letters in, with a heater, etc. Chav Zayin Adar, the Rebbe had a stroke. A few weeks after that, a fire erupted in the oil, and that little room that they had built for the Rebbe burnt up. How did the fire start in a cemetery? No one knows. Fire from heaven. I mean, we know how. It's from heaven. It's not a question. Burnt up. Where the Rebbe's room was burnt up. That room doesn't exist anymore. It was burnt in the fire. Gimel Tammuz. The Rebbe's soul left his body. And yet, even though his soul left his body, I want to end with a verse from the very end of the Torah. You look in Bezeis HaBracha, the very last parsha of the entire Torah. It says as follows. Chapter 34, verse 7. Moshe, on the day when did Moshe Rabbeinu pass away? On his birthday, right? He passed away on his 120th birthday. That's what we say, the 120. So on that day, it says, it's literally, this is like the last page of the Torah. This is the very last page, right? So I'm like one page before. The last verse of the Torah. It says that Moshe died, the Eved Hashem died, and they buried him, Begai, in the land of Moab. Moshe, and after said that he died and he buried him, no one knows where he's buried until that day. No one knows his burial place. The next verse 7 says, Moshe b'mei v'esem shana b'mosa. Moshe was 120 years old. Like ka'asa einai, his eyes never dimmed. V'loi nas lechai, nor did moisture leave his body even after he died. This is what the Torah says about Moshe on his 120th birthday. These are the words in the end of the Torah. That even though Moshe Rabbeinu, he physically passed away, and even though his soul went up to heaven, his body was buried in a place where no one knows where he's buried, nevertheless, even after he died, like his eyes never dimmed, nor did moisture ever leave his body. And that is the closing for us. In that, although in the story of the Rebbe's life, so to say, there was an ending in 1994, so to say, the Rebbe physically passed away and was buried in 1994, but as the Torah tells about Moshe Rabbeinu, on his 120th birthday, and you look at the growth of Chabad today, compared to what it was in 1994, exponentially beyond anything that anyone could have imagined in 94. Those remember 1994, every expert in the world was convinced that Chabad would fall apart, that we would jump off the buildings and just commit suicide and it would be over. And instead, at the 120th birthday of the Rebbe, which is now, as we speak, and you look at Chabad, you look at this show right here, look at this community, look at it right here in this room. You look at all of us sitting here, and you look at the community we built, with a rabbi that was a little kid when the Rebbe passed away. I was 9 years old when the Rebbe passed away in 94. And nevertheless, you know that even though we know where he's buried, but even though Moshe seemingly passed away, his eyes never dimmed, the moisture of his life never left his body. He was like moist, as if he was still alive. And so that's our conclusion, that even though, here's the Chaim wants to join me, on this very, very special day of the Rebbe's 120th birthday, which 120 is completion. Moshe lived till 120. It's a full lifetime. Even at the end of this lifetime, so to say, where now Mashiach has to come because it's 120 years. We are the continuation of the Rebbe's life. As long as we are alive and we are active in living with the morals and the values that the Rebbe instilled in us, with the love of another Jew that the Rebbe instilled within us, to care for another Jew, not only spiritually, but physically, to see the value in every mitzvah and to fill every single mitzvah, all the many different things the Rebbe taught us, and we live with that, then we are the embodiment of the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu's eyes never dimmed, the moisture never left his body, and the Rebbe is very, very much alive. This is about Yaakov Avinu Lo Meis, that Jacob didn't die. The Rebbe didn't die. The Rebbe is still alive. He's still living. He's living right here with us in Coral Springs. He's living with every single one of us Chassidim all over the world. And the Rebbe is Chai V'Kayim through us until, God willing, tonight, with Tchias HaMeisim, the resurrection of the dead, we'll all go back to Eretz Yisrael with Mashiach, with the Rebbe in the front, leading us to Geula very, very soon. B'Karev Mamish. Amen. Amen. Chaim.